Thanks, Justine. I wore the simpler outfit because I'm not the one with a long list of accolades. I talk to you on the radio. First of all, I want to say welcome to Captivity. It's good to have you all here. And the reason I say this is because this is a really unique experience for me. A captive audience is a rare opportunity for me to speak much longer and make much longer points than I would usually do. And the idea of a captive versus non-captive audience came about in about 1902 when they wanted to break up the difference between someone listening in a lecture theatre versus someone going to the arts or a museum to take in some information in a very different format. And the thing about a captive audience is everything is geared to keep you in your seats. Your seats are comfortable. You're all facing in one direction, which for me, who gets distracted by shiny objects, means that I know where the centre of attention is. The lights are dim, so you know where to look. Everything is geared for you to sit in your seats and pay attention. Not only that, it took you some energy to be here. Right? There wasn't an easy process coming along to be here. You had to say to yourself, I've got to commit to the edge. I've got to show up at the dendy. I've got to come and sit in a seat. And in fact, if I don't like the speaker, it's going to be really obvious when I get up to go. You'll do that awkward bum shuffle on the, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's not very good, as you leave. And we'll all see that because it's a captive audience. I don't get that luxury. I do radio and I don't even have a non-captive audience. What I have is a free radical audience. They're just ranging in the wild and they will tune in to me for 7 seconds, and if they don't like what they hear in 7 seconds, they'll bounce onto something else. And that can be like really scary. Like a lot of people say, in fact, Jenny, as we were talking before, like that must be really scary. And I think to myself, no, that's really exciting. Is because you can make really great points in 7 seconds or less. You can start a relationship in 7 seconds or less. And so it's been kind of fun as I started to think about how we do that well, is to start to unpack some of the steps that we take on radio so we can make a real lasting connection in 7 seconds or less. And the first one is that I think we do it really well on our show, is that we are assured and humble. And I don't think those terms are diametrically opposed. I think it's possible for you to be really sure of who you are as a person, the things that you are really good at, and the ways that you can do those good things regularly, and the things that you are really bad at. And so on our show, I'm often referred to as the rhinoceros, and my co-host Sam is the gameskeeper. Why? Because I stamp around and make a lot of noise, but if you keep me well fed, I'll be happy in the pen. And so that makes kind of for a really good dynamic on the show. I'm 38. In fact, tomorrow I turn 39. But like, I know who I am as a person, and I know this is what you're going to get. But within the fabric of the show, we also weave in this idea that I'm also teachable, and I'm constantly learning, and we have the ability within the framework of the show to apologise. Now, at that moment, I would say, swell apology music, and this symphony of strings would start to play. Because we do that regularly on the show. If we say something that isn't right, and a listener calls us out on it, we will swell apology music, which is kind of symphonic, and then over that apology music, we will apologise for whatever we've said. And we do that because we think it's really important that even though we might be assured of ourselves, we all make mistakes. And we all fall over, and we need to have a moment where we can say, hey, sorry, that was an error, and we're really sorry about that. And so we wanted to have within the show this fabric where we say, you know, we have a lot of fun, but we also know how to apologise well. So well that we have a symphony play every time we do it. And the reason we do that is my second point, is that it's good to be a pattern interrupter. My content director refers to me all the time as the human pattern interrupter. You can see in the way I dress, smart casual, he's out for fun. That doesn't go. It's a pattern interruption. Is that the shoes don't go with the ensemble, and the socks definitely don't go with the ensemble. But that's the way in radio, if you're going to make an impact in 7 seconds or less, everyone's working on a narrative. We like rhythm. We like tone. And when suddenly it breaks for too long, everyone wonders what's going on. And you can do that a number of creative different ways on the show. But the idea being is that if we follow a story and we go A, B, C, and eventually we'll end up in Z, and we can all see that unfold, it becomes predictable. I know where this is going. I've heard all of this before. I know what he's talking about. There's nothing new here. But a pattern interruption says, let's go A, B, and then we're going to go starfish, Z, Wolverine. And people are like, huh? What? Where? How do we get over here? It's a pattern interruption. That's the way comedy works, right? Is that the comedy works in a way that we go along a journey and it looks like it's a straight path, and then all of a sudden we take the garden path. And that's where humour comes from. And that's what we're always trying to do on the show, is how do we create a predictable common conclusion that everyone thinks that we're going to go there, and then we land at Wolverine. And when that happens, everyone stops and starts to tune in. And the way that we do that is by orchestrating a story where within that story there is gaps that you can write yourself into the story. And that's really significant. Is that I can tell a really fantastic story that's robust and rich. And as you're listening to it, you're looking for a moment where you can relate and connect. And it could be so fantastic that you go, I can't relate to this at all. But what we've always tried to do in our story is say, let's have space where people can author themselves into the stories. And so as you're starting to hear the story, you should be able to go, oh yeah, I've had an experience of that. I know what that's like. You know what? I've got a point to make on that. And that's what we want, because if we can do that in 7 seconds or less, where you're hearing a story that we can all relate to, then there's an opportunity for you to write yourself into the narrative, and within the framework of what typically is one-way traffic, is that radio is a broadcast medium, right? Is that I speak and it goes out. I don't then stop and hear it come back, right? But what we do within the framework of our show is we orchestrate these conversations where we speak and there's gaps for you to write yourself into the story, and then we open up the phones and we open up text line and we open up Twitter, and people can respond. And then we can narrate you into the story. And what happens is that we can now create an architecture where the story is much better and much grander because you have participated in the story. And I think that's really essential when you're building a relationship, is having the ability to say, here is a story, but I'm leaving purposefully gaps to allow you to participate. And the reason we want to do that is because we want you to become the hero of the story. The story's good, but the story's going to be way better, way bigger, way grander if you narrate yourself into the story. But Duncan, radio's like scary. There's 400,000 people that listen to breakfast every morning. Like, that's a lot of people. At any one time, you switch on a microphone, 30,000 people are tuned into a segment, right? That's big numbers. I'm talking to a stadium every time the microphone opens up. So how do you do that? Like, that's a big umbrella that you've got to figure out a story that everyone can sit underneath. It's really simple. Red is better than green. And there's no argument about it, right? When I go to the store, I want the red frog. When I go to the car store, I want the red car. Red is by far the superior colour to green. Everyone in the room now suddenly has an opinion on colours. He's wrong. Green is way better. Kermit's green. Obviously green's a better curry. You know? Is that those kind of moments orchestrated within the show allow someone else to step into it. And if you're passionate about it, like weirdly passionate about it, people will also fire up about it. 24 is the best temperature. Without a shadow of a doubt. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. When a room is 24, it's just right. People have an opinion on that. Who has an opinion on temperature at home, right? If you're a dad, you know what the best temperature is, and you know when it changes by ½ degree. I do that all the time at home. Who's touched the temperature? You know, God's touched the temperature, but I'm like, you know, it's changed and we need to get it back to 24, which is the best temperature. Or just simply, how good is garlic bread? Everyone has an opinion on how good garlic bread is. And so what we're doing in our show is we call this scraping the barrel, but the idea is that the narrative is so broad and so wide and so simple, anybody can participate. And not only that, we are going to make you the hero when you weave yourself into the narrative. And so we found initially when we first did this, you know, we'd get 6 phone calls a show, we'd get 4 texts, 5 texts, and we'd be like, oh man, they're really engaging. Now we're getting somewhere in the vicinity of about 200 to 300 phone calls a show. We get 300 texts, 400 texts a show. I mean, it just constantly rings because we've created a space where we're saying to you, if you participate, you are a champion, and we want to celebrate that. And that kind of leads me to my last point, because there's a bunch of different points that I want to make, but it is that we know that in radio, it can be really kind of scary and daunting to call. Like, you know, to pick up the phone and call the number, 1300 40 20 20, we say it like, I see it in my sleep. But if you make that decision to enter into the party, we're going to celebrate you. And we know that it is possible to make you feel the love in 7 seconds or less. One of the theories that we have in the show is how to express the 5 love languages to a person within the framework of the show, which is it's a Gary Chapman book. But essentially, what are the ways that we can impact your life to bring a little joy, to bring a little love, to bring a little inspiration, and make sure that you are celebrated as the hero. And if you ever make the decision to call the show, we will make you the star. And that means that we're willing to lay ourselves down to make you the star. And that's hard sometimes. I mean, we get a 4-year-old who will give us one word after a 3-second pause. Do you know? And so we figure out a framework where we know if we get a 1-word caller and they are just going to give us yes, no answers, we can still make them a superstar. And we can still make them feel in a way that they go, I called the show and I was bold enough to do it, and they loved me for it. And I think that is one of the most essential qualities that we need to have, is that it kind of sounds like a little bit of Oprah Winfrey. Everybody's going to get love when they call the show. You're going to get love and you're going to get the love. And look under your seats, everyone's getting love today. But it's serious, is that I think that in the space of 7 seconds, you can communicate love. You can communicate truth. You can communicate, like we had to do earlier this week, a really sad and tragic reality about something that happened in Christchurch. Is that we can stop in a moment and we can say we're going to get serious, but we're going to express a love in the seriousness to say that we love our New Zealand brothers, you know, and we poke fun at them all the time on our show. But the truth is that we love you guys and we're feeling for you in this moment. And you can do that in 7 seconds or less. We rejoice with those who rejoice and we mourn with those who mourn. That leaves me 3 seconds to make another point. And I think the opportunity that you have to make a connection in 7 seconds or less actually does exist outside the world of radio. I mean, people are scrolling feeds endlessly. People are looking for real connection as they walk around. And it's not hard for us to stop in a moment and make that connection. Do you know? Like, I'm really passionate about kind of mantras for life. And my mantra for life for like the last decade has been, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. That's 3 seconds. I've still got 4 seconds to make another point. You know, and the second point that I typically make in follow-up is that my hope in what I do on air is to bring a little joy to your life every single day. And it's a simple thing, but it's possible that you can take these moments as they happen and orchestrate that in 7 seconds or less. Thanks.